everybody. It's Christina Marie Weber, and I run a company called Christian Biz Owners on Fire, and we help faith-based and spiritual business owners who want a more fulfilling and prosperous business or ministry while putting God, their purpose, and their relationships first on a daily basis. So here we do a monthly video based on a question someone's asked me, whether a prospect, a client, someone following me, or it can be just something I notice in general that I think applies to all of the people that I work with that I think would be helpful to create an educational video for. So today we're going to be talking about 10 steps to DOGE your business. And DOGE, of course, stands for Department of Government Efficiency. So it's been a lot of fun today. So I didn't know who Elon Musk was a number of years ago, but anyone who's been paying attention to the news does know right now. He is helping President Trump with the Department of Government Efficiency, calls himself tech support. And President Trump is very visible, wanting to comfortable with TV. I mean, you can get on any day and find him and his cabinet or whoever on TV and Elon. So that's kind of the style of this presidency. So as an entrepreneur, this is not a political video, but this is a video really about learning from successful entrepreneurs. So whatever you think about him, Elon Musk has had multiple successful businesses. PayPal, SpaceX, we just returned some astronauts from that, Twitter, Tesla. So obviously he knows a little bit about being a successful entrepreneur. And I have found him really the access now, because he's so public with his current role. I found it very fascinating to kind of just see how he ticks. Because as business owners, or really anybody, if you want to aspire to something, and I aspire to having a successful business and maintaining a successful business, it really does help to look at people already doing it and already have done it. So I have found watching him talk, observing what he's doing, very fascinating. And I think there's lots of great applications for small businesses. So that's what we're going to do today. We're just going to go through the 10 steps to DOGE your business. So some of excuse me, some of the things that were kind of the reason why Trump put Elon in this position. One of them is to make government more efficient, but it was also to identify fraud and abuse. So those are kind of the themes as we look through this. So the first step is cutting expenses improves your bottom line. So they can earn and get the gold card and all the tariffs, what they want to do, but if the expenses in the government or even in your business are out of control, it really doesn't matter, or even your household, how much money you bring in. I'm a big advocate of Profit First by Mike Michalowicz. And he really, it's just a mindset of, instead of just looking at business minus expenses equals profit, so you get the sloppy thirds, it's business minus profit equals expenses. So really the thinking here is you actually affect your bottom line in a business or in your government by cutting expenses drastically more than by bringing more revenue in, particularly in a business example, because you have to expend money and resources to provide the product or service for that revenue, those sales you've accumulated. Whereas if you're just cutting expenses, that's 100% off your bottom line. So again, that's really what Elon Musk is doing. He's doing the basics of trying to get an organization back in order. And I love his simple observations and practices. So, a lot of it gets back to standard accounting practices. He made a comment that there was a process where funds were going out, but there was no expense code. Again, the bigger you get in your business, the more likely there could be someone embezzling from you or whatever. But if you have these kind of practices in place, it can help prevent that. Plus, when you're doing your numbers, if you have things accounted for properly, it's easier to see the overall picture of where you are. So these were not standard practices being done. And then offering some checks and balances, just in an organization or with yourself. I mean, just to understand, we want to make sure this data is good and that there's not a way for a temptation for employees to be able to fraud the system in whatever way. And that doesn't just account with money, it can account for time. I mean, I learned the hard way being the good, nice person, and kind of eliminating some of the checks and balances on my staff time that I trust them or whatever. And they were human nature. They were abusing that. And that is also stealing from you and your business. Um, and the other thing on step one, looking at the cutting expenses improves your bottom line. Unlike the government, no business has a magic money machine. Apparently, Elon found several magic money machines where payments were being made where there was no funds that they were being taken from. So in the real world, and you may have a magic money machine in your life, it may be an enabling or a supportive family member or something like that. We all need help. Family funding is one of the biggest funding sources for new businesses. It's okay. I mean, I've loaned my business personal resources when I've needed to. That's not anything wrong with that, but we need to turn off the magic money machine at some point and really get down to income and expenses to thrive as a business long term. So step two, make sure your vision gets implemented with good technical support. So despite what's being said, this agency that DOGE or whatever that Trump's implemented, it's been implemented in other administrations. It had different names, but I mean, how many politicians are saying, we're going to cut waste, we're going to do this? It's not that this isn't, and even in your business, I'm going to really, tighten the belt, make sure we're not, we're being efficient. You can say anything you want, but really these days, you really need technology to be able to implement. And so I think really the new thing that Elon Musk and Doge has provided our country is to be able to watch this, that we can take as business owners, is they have shown what it looks like to actually successfully implement those ideals of cutting waste or identifying fraud or improving efficiency with technology. And I've just been amazed and really impressed by some of the creative ways that they've discovered things or whatever using data and using technology. And this kind of a side note, really understanding, there's a lot of steps to becoming efficient and lean. You need to know what you need to do, and then you have to take that and figure out, well, how can I use the technology to help me do that? And I think we're seeing that like with AI. Everyone's talking about AI this, AI that. But you can waste a lot of time going down that rabbit hole if you really don't understand what you really need. And then see if there's something in AI that could provide that. So again, connecting the concept with the practicality, we're in an age with technology that can be done. So, which is exciting. So step three, expect and plan a workaround for resistance. So we've seen a little resistance in this Doge plan, and that's human nature. You're going to do that, see that in your business. If you start making changes in your business that take people off the status quo, they were liking how it was working, may have been working for them as far as the amount of effort they were putting in versus what they were getting out of your business, but it might not have been working for you as a business owner. So we want to make sure that we expect that. And it's interesting. First, I think the first thing here is to understand how quickly the changes need to be made in your business. And I think in the government, the message I'm getting loud and clear is they feel like these changes need to be made yesterday. So I had a guest who goes into Josh Fonger. He goes into businesses that are kind of maybe even on the edge of bankruptcy. I mean, a lot of times it's just not working. And he talks about, the quicker you make the changes, the more blood that's on the floor. So again, if you still have the luxury of not having to do things massively fast, you can ease people into change. But if you're at a point where you really have to do, like it or not, if your business is going to survive, you're going to need to do things quickly, then you're going to have a little bit more resistance you're going to need to deal with. So weigh that out and decide, what's the right pace for you and your organization as you move towards greater profitability, greater efficiency. So step 4, ensure that you and your team live caring and competence every day. I love hearing that, like he'd say, we're missing caring and competence. And then he talks about how, it's easy to just let money go out the door because no one complains when they get money they shouldn't have gotten, but they're going to complain if they don't get money they should have gotten. And just kind of a lack of caring, like, it's easier just to let this slide. I don't want to make any head waves or have any hassles or buck up against anyone here. And it's really a lack of caring of the resources that you've been given. And that's the same thing in your organization. I mean, you can have people that are just checked out and they want to do the least amount there. You may get to that point of being burned out and you're you're feeling that way. But really, we need to have that care and the competence. So sometimes it's not just that they don't care, it's just if they're not up to it, including yourself, it may need that you need some skills to be able to handle the next stage and you don't have them and you are not competent. So we need to gain competence. We need to know what we need to have, and we need to assess the people on our team doing things. Are they competent and do they care? Applies to them just as much as it applies to us. Step 5, understand your business does not operate in a vacuum and take action to improve bigger business, climate, economic environment. So again, I bless Elon Musk. I personally appreciate what he's doing for our country to help untangle this that in a way that we've never been able to do. But the guy doesn't need another job. I mean, he's the founder of actively managing or whatever, the CEO of multiple companies, but he's also not an idiot. So he's a very brilliant person. So the thing here is he's not spending the time because he's Mother Teresa. He's spending the time because he sees the writing on the wall. If you have like a political climate that gets to the point where the government, in extreme cases, can come in and just usurp private property, your business. I mean, you can build a phenomenal business, but if you're in a climate where it's brute force and it doesn't matter if it's your business, they're going to go in and take it over and may even kill you. It really doesn't matter how successful you are. Or if you're trying to do business in an environment that, because of the way things are being run by government or just the culture or whatever, is becoming less and less friendly to doing business, you have a motivation. There's a motivation there. And if there's something you can do to fix it, do it. It's not a waste of time. And I'll give you an example. I have several clients who are clinicians of different kinds. So they're getting government reimbursement, for their services. And I know myself as a licensed clinical marriage and family therapist, your costs go up, but the reimbursements go down. It becomes more and more difficult to run a profitable business. Well, at some point, the reimbursements can't just keep declining. You can't keep people. I mean, these are people that have multiple people working under them. So at some point, it's going to make sense, probably now, for them to be looking at legislative action or political action to say, look, we need to educate the government or whoever is paying these bills that we do have expenses and we want to keep our costs low, but there's a point when people won't do that kind of work for the compensation allowed. And so they may need to lobby or talk to their legislator or whoever. I know I've taken a little different approach, looking at the climate that I felt was not conducive to business, not conducive to having religious freedom, which I value highly. So I took a different approach. I started responded by doing the holy name, enrolling in the holy name, holy face devotion. It's actually a devotion started in this 18th century, I think, but a nun started it, and it's a devotion to help fight against communism. So I'm not out doing an Elon Musk, but I'm a little prayer warrior in my own little circle, really daily praying this devotion, which is one of the promises. It's directly designed to combat tyranny and communism. So again, I think everybody needs to be awake of what's happening, and in their own way, especially as a business owner, you have more at stake. It's talking to somebody who works for somebody, works for a larger company, and is not really as aware of some of the economic turmoil as I am and some of my clients are, that are directly impacted by some of the decisions and things that are going on. And I just said, the business people, they see it first because they start seeing the decline in sales, or they see the rising costs, or this or that. And it's the employees, they may not be aware of how strained the financial structure of their company is until they get laid off. So they're kind of late to the game. So again, business owners that kind of see the writing on the wall are prudent to do something like what Elon Musk. I mean, by doing what he's doing, if assuming it's all successful and we have a solvent country and that's functioning, then he wins, not because they gave him money, but because they place to provide to operate his businesses, and that's fair and free. So it's not a waste of time, and it's not just charity. It's smart business. So step 6, detach from what others think and stay focused on your vision while things are being disrupted. So clearly things are being disrupted. So I saw an interview of Elon, and someone was pointing out how his stocks were going down. This is when the Tesla dealerships were being attacked, and now it's moved into people docking and trying to target Tesla owners and scrape up and ruin their cars. Now, this is before it was getting progressively worse. Someone was asking him, do you care? Like, do you understand, as you're going out, the damage this is causing maybe X or your company or Tesla or whoever? Do you understand, does this ever make you afraid, or do you care about this? And he just flat out said, no, I don't care. He wasn't saying I don't care about my Tesla customers being attacked, but as far as people not liking what he's doing. And I think the key there is when you're focused on your vision and you know what needs to be done, and it's not a violation of other people's right. I mean, we're not saying do anything at any cost, but it's hard. Maybe what you're doing is hard. Maybe there's a personal price of what you're doing, but you still pursue it. That is that's prudent. I mean, it's good to not worry what other people think. A lot of times that looking for human respect keeps us in situations that are dangerous, or cause us to not act quick enough, and it really can put our business and finances, etc., in danger. So there's a great value of detaching. Step 7, think big, think big, start small. So obviously you have to have some confidence to say, I'm going to go ahead and take this on, knowing there's going to be the resistance and knowing the mammoth thing you're dealing with in the federal government. But I really have been impressed with looking at such a big, onerous task, how he has come up with ability to kind of focus in smaller ways. And just give you a couple of examples. Of course, many people are familiar with the sending an email to all the employees wanting a response to the 5 things they've accomplished. There was a thought process behind that. There was a suspicion that there's people on the payroll that don't exist, or maybe they have another job and they're not actively working their job. So he took a big concept, of all the employees in the federal government, that's pretty mammoth, and he broke it down in kind of a simple tactical steps. Now you can criticize it or what, but it was I did shake things up. And I'm curious how many people they found didn't respond at all or don't exist or whatever. But it was a small step, a small, very actionable, doable step, send an email that they could do that would accomplish kind of a pretty large goal. I thought the other thing, kind of an example of this, a small step that's accomplishing a big thing, is when he was suspicious of, like, there are social security recipients that maybe have false or using somebody else's social security number, or they're fraud or something like this. And so I can't remember if this has been implemented, but the recommendation was that to continue your social security, we're not going to allow the online verification. You will need to go into an office just to verify you are who you are, and that is your social security number. Now, of course, it's a little bit of a hassle for people that are on social security, but if you look at the bigger picture, I mean, you're getting these benefits. It's worth a trip to the social security office just to keep the system solvent, versus somebody who's gaming the system and electronically maybe using somebody else's number, or it's fake. um, they're going to be they're going to be exposed. They won't be able to go into an office if it's not a real person. Again, I thought those are just great strategies on the small end. The more we can think of that in our own business, it really is uh, definitely out of the box thinking, and which is fantastic. Step 8, grow wealth by making sure you and your staff are moving from low or no productivity tasks to higher productivity tasks. We're not robots, and he's making robots actually too, by the way. I didn't realize that till I watched the video, but Opus One or whatever. But we are, we this is just reality. If you're going to grow wealth, you need to increase productivity. Now, I think he had a really couple of good examples here. He's pointed out, and it's interesting what your numbers are tracking, because our numbers, like in the federal level, are tracking jobs, but they don't really I think they're trying to change this, but they don't distinguish between a government job or a manufacturing job, for example. So he gave the example, if you add 10 more people to the DMV office versus 10 more people manufacturing a car, what is the net effect on the GDP of your country? Well, those are better. You're going to you're producing a product with the people working in the manufacturing, and in the government, you're not producing something. It's more of a bureaucracy that does not add value to, I mean, obviously we need to have driver's license and stuff like that, but adding more people to do the same job that is maybe a necessary evil, but doesn't really add value to our GDP or whatever, those are not equal. And same thing in your business, the tasks you do, there's certain things, no one else can do this video for me. And I have a personal brand. I need to be doing this video. But there's lots of things in the background that I don't really have to do. They're not as productive, or checking email or whatever. Again, it's not like we're saying don't do anything, or you have to be a robot and constantly productive every moment. But we are saying, I think what he's saying is, you want to look at your business and say, okay, once we kind of quantify what's being done, how can we gradually shift more and more of these less productive things that either other people can do, can be automated, or really don't even need to be done at all? We want to change that time invested into that into what are these other tasks that are more high payoff tasks. And again, I'm all about the slow go. I mean, it doesn't have to be done overnight, but it is a kind of a nice roadmap if you can look at your schedule and just really start to quantify that. And that's basically what he's articulating there. The other example of that is when they first started Doge, they identified that they could only have 10,000 people retire a month. And he was like, why is that? And I guess because they have a process where they go down into a cave to get records and blah, blah, blah. And they talked about all of the different employees that were involved in this, and how, they hadn't really modernized their system. They were doing something we've been doing 20, 30, 40 years ago. really not the best use of those people's time. And his point was, let's take those people and let's put them in a different position that really is adding value. We can automate some of that and digitize a lot of that. So we need to think like that in our business. That's why he's been a successful entrepreneur. Step 9, speak the truth in simple language to get buy-in for processes and sacrifice that might need to be made. I've seen Elon being interviewed and just saying, and it's amazing to me that we really haven't had someone standing up and saying this so clearly, because I've been in this country in the time frame that we're massively have a deficit in debt. I mean, I'm not a accountant, but I mean, I could tell that's not going to work long term. I mean, and for him to basically say in such clear language, if we don't do this, our country will go bankrupt. If we don't look at social security efficiencies, there will be no money to provide for people. Not that that's like rocket science stuff, even though he is a rocket scientist. It's just the way he says it is very calm. It's very clear, but it's very firm. And this can be done in your business. There have been times I've had to, like with help. When I first started, I had a virtual assistant from an agency and they required 20 hours a week minimum. And so when I was going along and really not monetizing and needing to cut costs, I just said, I just can't. I talked to my assistant who I had a very good rapport with, and I said, I don't have the funds to keep up the 20 hours. I mean, I could do 10 hours, but the agency requires 20. I said, so, I understand if, you don't want to continue working here, but I would need a reduction, would you be open to a reduction in hours so we can continue to get this going? I mean, just flat out, I wasn't, fleecing the business or anything like that. It was a business reality. We weren't making the money we needed to make to be able to continue doing that. And she agreed to that. So I've had different conversations like that too, just being really true and upfront. This is where we're at. And this is what the situation is. So, we don't need to hide it. We need to just be clear and realistic. I've had that with my family when I've had to scale down vacation plans. I really value getting away, but when I've had a not so great year, I mean, I've had to say, look, we can't do X because I just don't have the funds for it. But you know what, we can do this, and this is why. And just that communication. Not only it's modeling living within your means, it's modeling honesty, authenticity, and people who really are there for you get that and they're willing to, make that work. Step 10, be curious. I think this is probably the central thing of what I see Elon Musk doing. And I think he even said it. I saw him speaking to his Tesla team or whatever at a big event with employees for Tesla. And he talked about being curious. Just be curious. So step 10, be curious and finding data to ask and answer the right questions. Um, again, these are questions that are so obvious, but like, okay, he said, I'm kind of curious how someone making, 150,000 a year, 175,000 a year in a government job in a couple of years is a multimillionaire. I'm just curious how that happens. Are they really good in the stock market? So, and what he's doing, he's not only curious, he's backing it up by investigating the data that will tell that story. And that's making some people feel very uncomfortable. It will make people in your business uncomfortable. There are people in your team that may be withholding information for you. Maybe it's not because they're stealing or embezzling, but maybe I had a situation where someone really gave me the sob story of they can't document stuff in the process manual. And looking back, it's not that they couldn't, it's that they didn't want to because they liked the fact that I didn't know different things. We didn't have things documented. It was it was a scarcity move on trying to be not replaceable. Um, those are not long-term employees in your business. If they're gonna do things like that and not understand as a business, we need to have standard operating procedures. We need to have those documented. They're going to be so threatened by that. they're not abundant. And I have found people that aren't abundant are do things that aren't good because they're coming from such a fear base. So being curious. The other thing I thought was really interesting what he did is being curious about and finding data. He just looked at the age of the Social Security recipients and the age of people receiving small business loans. Who would have thought to do that? Like that's a really quick way to say, um, I think there might be some fraud here. I think there might be something off. Let me look at that. Let me just search for this. Again, taking what information you want to know, what your goal is, and then breaking it down into an actionable step. That's what I'm seeing in him. That is very fascinating. And the creative ways that he's doing that. So, to conclude, the fastest way to get what you want is to learn from others who've already achieved it. So, if you want to be a successful entrepreneur, it makes sense to study someone who is a serial successful entrepreneur, no matter what your politics are. So I would challenge you to take one of the steps from this list and apply it in your business. Like with any resource you would find helpful. So that's another thing, be an active rather than passive learner. You can watch videos, you can read books and do whatever, but if you never take anything from it and actually implement it, it's not really a good use of your time. So I love to help people take their vision and break it down into manageable steps, not only that they can do professionally, that work with their personal life. So we are a whole person, we have a whole person vision. And so we need to have a strategy that works not just for the business, but also something we can sustain and maintain, and we love it and we love doing it. And allows us to do the things we want to do in our lives and with people we love. So if you feel like I might be an appropriate resource for you, I would love to have a conversation. So I'm pretty accessible, but you can find me on LinkedIn. Just search for Christina Marie Weber or Christian Biz Owners on Fire. Send me a direct message there. Or you can go to my contact page on my website, Christian Biz Owners on Fire. Just send me a little note. And in both of those, if you are wanting to explore working together, write the phrase ready to thrive. And that'll kind of let me clue me in that that's really why you're reaching out. So appreciate it. You have a blessed day, and see if it might make sense for you to doge your business. Take care.